Today's episode is brought to you by Taft Law and its Franchise Advance program, a one-of-a-kind program developed by your host, Josh Brown, to help entrepreneurs assess, convert, and grow your business the right way through sound franchise structures. To learn more, go to taftlaw.com and type Franchise Advance Program in the search bar.
If you think like, act like, or are trying to grow like a franchise, then the Franchise Euphoria podcast is for you. Hello and welcome everybody. Josh Brown here, and I created this podcast for one main goal: to help people who are trying to grow their business through franchising or franchise-like structures to do it the right way. I've been practicing law now as a franchise lawyer for many, many years, and I've seen it done the right way and the wrong way. And this podcast is not filled with a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. Rather, I talk with real people, people who have been there, have done it, are doing it right now. And I also dive deep into specific topics related to franchising. So if this is of interest to you, you are at the right place. Enjoy. All right, I'm here today with Edward Navan, who is a co-founder and chief visionary officer of the Covery, a wellness spa brand housing a diverse collection of non-invasive therapies that strengthen both the mind and the body. Welcome to the show, Edward. How you doing?
I'm good, Josh. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the time today.
Well, I love this space. In franchising, I've been in the franchise world for, over 17, 18 years now. And the wellness space has just, I don't even want to say crept up, but it's just blown through the doors over the last number of years. In terms of franchising, tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to co-found this and who your co-founder is, and then we'll dive into the actual brand itself.
Absolutely. So I've got a long background in fitness, health and fitness. I started as a personal trainer when I got out of college, and the joke in the family was 4 years of school for you to be a personal trainer. But it was either that or go into, it was either that or I go back to school to get a master's or possible, doctorate and go into research and teaching. And quite frankly, when I was in college, I wanted to play baseball and drink beer. Wasn't a lot of thought about the future at that time. When you get into
most of us, right? Yeah. Like most of us.
Yeah, what it was. And I was actually fortunate to get hurt. And when I got hurt, I was playing baseball. I met a great professor, and he was like, you should try exercise physiology, anatomy. And I'm like, hell no, man, that's some crazy stuff. That's going to be too hard. But I took an exercise phys class from him, absolutely loved it. And from there, I graduated, got started into fitness with personal training, and I started to grow a personal training company inside of large box health clubs. I did that for about 7 to 8 years. And in doing that, it was my first chance to really run a business. And I realized I'm not really sure how to run a business yet. I was still kind of right out of school. So long story short, went from personal training, and from there I started to work with large fitness vending equipment companies, large manufacturers across the country, and worked and traveled the country for about 10 years, just seeing how fitness was different in each community and even each, every state. It was a little bit different, how it was presented and how people responded to it. And, about that time, it was about 2012, I was working for Nautilus, and one of my accounts was going to be Orange Theory Fitness. And so I went into Orange Theory Fitness, tried to understand the product a little bit. I fell in love with it and thought it was a great product. And then I started to get to know a little more about that business, and I decided, I want to offer an evolution of this product. And I started a concept called Redzone Fitness, and started licensing it in big box health clubs. And from there, I was able to meet who's now my partner and backer. Met them actually at a trade show in Las Vegas, and got to know them. And, they loved what I was doing with the fitness concept. And they said, hey, why aren't you franchising this? And I said, guys, I don't have the capital to franchise, and I don't have the people. So again, long story short, these guys loved it. They decided let's go ahead and form this concept called Redzone Fitness. And we started franchising that back in 2018. And we actually did a great deal with Good Life Fitness in Canada. They bought the rights to develop Canada. And Good Life is the third largest global fitness brand. So for us, that was massive. Unfortunately, literally 2 weeks after we did that deal, that's when the whole world shut down. And fitness was one of the hardest hit environments, as everybody knows. Mm-hmm. We were fortunate because we were in the South and Southeast to be able to maintain a level of business to keep our doors open and do well. But at that time, Josh, I was looking at the idea of things like cryotherapy and things like red light, things like compression, because I turned 45 this year. So a couple of years ago, I wasn't working out as hard as I used to. I didn't have the energy like I used to. And, when COVID hit, it allowed us to really sit back, study what is now the Covery model, the Covery Wellness model, and to look at what was going on in the world, of people. For example, healthcare workers, over 25% were diagnosed with some type of mental health disorder coming out of COVID because of all the stress they were under. And so again, we had the fitness model. We still do. We franchised that, which was good, but we saw the writing on the wall to put together a recovery model, something that was more than just red light and compression, something that addressed the aesthetic ends of it, the mental component of it, how to sleep better and how to just be a better, happier person. So that's my road to franchising. Started with me running a small business, getting into sales for very large groups out there, and then deciding, what, I love this. I want to put my own systems in place. And, one step led to another.
Now you're in the Louisiana area?
We are. I laugh a little bit. We're based out of Baton Rouge. If you had a perfect world, you wouldn't draw a circle around Baton Rouge and be like, that's where we're going to start our franchise. But, my partners were here and they wanted to start in this area. So we started out of Baton Rouge and quickly grew around the Southeast and Southwest.
Hey, listen, with all the partying and shenanigans that goes around in New Orleans, I think it's perfect for a wellness spa.
It really is. Especially it's great for the people that are going to go out pre-partying and, for afterwards the next day.
So let's talk about, for those who don't, a lot of people are just coming in to understand all the different offerings of a wellness spa. And it changes like most things over time. And I remember when cryotherapy first came around several years back and people were getting to know that. And certainly it's very popular now. You still have folks who go, gosh, why would I want to go and, basically freeze myself? But then, with athletes and with a lot of other folks, it's one of the only things that can help them. Talk a little bit about that and what you guys offer. I think you had mentioned sort of the red light therapy, some infusions and other sorts of the hyperbaric chambers and other sorts of treatments.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this space is really in its infancy at this point in time. I give a lot of credit out there in the franchise world to Restore. Those guys did a great job in kind of laying the groundwork for something that it's not a med spa. It's also not a traditional spa. It's this whole new wellness concept it's kind of an evolution on everything that's been going on for years. What's interesting is, when people come
I actually turned them into a franchise store. So they're great. Yeah, they kind of led the way. Yeah,
they did. They kind of led that path out there, and I think it's still very blurry. Obviously, there's no roadmap for success in the franchise lane of wellness as of yet. So again, with ours, it's the Covery Wellness Spa, and even the word spa is a misnomer. What we're doing really is biohacking. It's cellular health. It's optimization of life, but you can't put that on a sign outside the door. People don't quite understand what it is yet. So kind of getting into what we do, when people walk in our doors, what we really focus on is the outcome. I'd say 90% of people that walk in our doors don't know almost anything that we do inside of there. They might have stumbled in because they wanted an IV. And we're an entire wellness model. I always tell people we are medicine in the next 10 years. We have a habit in our society of being prescriptive or, getting a lot of prescriptions. We tend to try to Band-Aid the problem in healthcare, I think, instead of actually address it head on and be preventative with it. So I know you asked about what we do in the Covery. We have a lot of different therapies and a lot of different modalities. So cryotherapy obviously is a big thing for people. It's the root cause of aging is inflammation. At the end of the day, everything that goes wrong in our body goes wrong because of stress and inflammation, improper diet, every day with stress, lack of sleep. So what we did is we put together a myriad of therapies that people can love. I'll kind of walk you through really quick without rambling too much, but it all starts with IV therapy. With IV therapy, we know that 97% of those vitamins and minerals are going to be uptaken by the body. We know most people are walking around dehydrated to begin with. And when you're dehydrated, you don't sleep properly. You fatigue a lot easier. You're going to get hurt a lot faster. So we start with IV therapy. Then from there, and we have RNs in all of our spas that work with everybody because, obviously you're going to have certain conditions. You're going to have certain needs. You might not know what you need fixed, but our nurses are there to help you with it. Second step to it we talk about is something like cryotherapy. Cryotherapy is cold therapy. It is a huge release of dopamine and serotonin. Most people say, I don't want to be cold. Well, it's a dry cold. So it's not comfortable for that first minute. But once you get past that first minute, man, you feel like you're shot out of a cannon. And so we always encourage people, hey, start with an IV. When you're done with that, let's go ahead and get into cryotherapy because we know with that cryotherapy, all that blood is going to rush from the extremities to the core because it wants to protect your vital organs. And then when you get out of the cryo, that blood oxygenates and rushes back to the body. So ultimately, it's like double dipping an IV is how we look at it. Then we talk to people about things like PEMF. Are you familiar with PEMF, Josh?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
PEMF is really interesting. I think in the next 3 years, it's going to be one of the biggest pain management platforms out there. But essentially, it's pulse electronic magnetic field therapy. And for what that means, really simple, it's like hooking jumper cables up to every cell on your body. So we have over 100 trillion cells in our body. We're dying with over 1 million cells per second are actually dying or having to get regenerated. So things like PEMF help regenerate those cells. So if you really look at what PEMF does, every night you charge your cell phone battery. Every night or every day you should be charging your body in that same way. So we have a lot of people that come in for pain management and they don't want to do the pills. The pill farms have been out there for years. So we'll work with them and we'll do things like cryotherapy and PEMF back to back. We'll create like a superhuman almost stack for them. So obviously one thing works off the other. We also have hyperbaric chambers. The reason we have hyperbaric chambers and we use the hard chambers in our practice. The reason we do that is we know that there's going to be a better oxygen uptake. And we know.
What do you mean the hard chambers? When you say hard chambers, what do you mean?
So with hyperbarics, you have a hard chamber and you have soft chambers. And the soft chambers where you kind of get in the inside and you zip it up, they can't hold as much pressure. Typically, those will hold about 1.3, what they consider ATA. So what we did is we went with that hard chamber that starts at 1.5 to 2.0. And it's a little bit more intense than a soft chamber would be for healing. A lot of the time,
when you're talking about all this stuff, obviously when you're mentioning registered nurses and so forth, you're getting into a medical type sphere, and in the wellness space, I know it always is that sort of balance of some of it is either medical or quasi medical versus non medical, and I know every state defines it a little bit differently, and there's all the laws that you have to comport with. So not talking about that, but just in general, talk about, in terms of, people who come and utilize these services. Is this something that, the doctors are telling them, hey, go find a membership to do some of these type of therapies? Or is this separate from that? Or is it sort of a combination of people looking for, alternatives to some of the traditional routes? Or talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And the reason I started off talking about fitness is we know about 80% of the population doesn't really work out, right? They don't want to move a whole lot. So how are they going to get healthier? So what we're seeing in the wellness right now is we are seeing a lot of that other 80% of people that don't work out that much that are coming to us because they're overstressed. They're not sleeping right. A lot of people have, we have gut health issues all over the map. So we have a lot of people come to us that say, look, I just want to feel better. I don't have the energy to work out necessarily. So with people like that, they'll come in, and that's where things like cryotherapy, red light, sauna, they're all about blood flow, and they're all about getting people to feel better, and hopefully they'll move a little bit more. So our demographic in these wellness spas is really all over the map. I mean, we've got an 81-year-old gentleman that comes to us. He had his prostate removed, and when they removed his prostate, they nicked part of his colon on the inside. So he had a lot of internal bleeding. So he came to us 90 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and after 5 weeks, his internal bleeding had stopped, his skin lesions had cleared up, and he had lost 19 pounds. So this is an 81-year-old that changed nothing in his life other than getting hyperbaric treatments and just had phenomenal results. So I think the best way I can answer that question, Josh, is we get a lot of like the neurosurgeons. We get a lot of people that work with kids with autism that send them to us because they know that oxygen therapy is going to help them. Then we have a lot of the C-level suites, a lot of the managers out there that they feel like their brain is just going to explode because they're being bombarded by so much. They come to us to get that mental wellness in check. So it really is an even mix of everybody.
And the Covery, the Covery, I should say, it came about in you guys first opened in 2020, August 2020?
We opened our first one in April of 2021.
2021. Okay. Yeah. So obviously it was interesting times you were opening in. Congratulations on having the guts to do that.
Exactly. You gotta be bold, man. You gotta be bold. One thing, it might be another. So go for it.
Talk about that. I mean, obviously you had the previous experiences you had mentioned, earlier. Nobody had experience with COVID. Nobody had experience with the world, being shut down like it did. At least nobody in our lifetimes. And so, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what was that like for you? I mean, were you guys just in your mind? Were you thinking, okay, survive in advance, like the NCAA tournament? Survive this in this location, and then let's advance what we're trying to do in franchising? Or what was the mentality at that time in 2021 when you opened that first location?
A lot of it, going back to our pedigree of being in fitness a long time, was realizing that the entire wellness industry was about to shift. What was important for fitness up until 2021 or 2020 wasn't going to be as important anymore. So what we looked at is we said, you know what? We think the recovery portion of fitness is the largest avenue for opportunity out there. And we think we're about 3 or 4 years ahead of the curve right now. So when we opened, we really opened in blind faith and said, you know what? We know people are going to come for IVs. That's pretty simple. We'll teach them about the rest of these things. And
that was the thing, because the IV, my understanding in this area too, to your point, was a lot of people through COVID were still going to get the IV and the injections and everything as part of trying to stay well, trying not to get sick.
Well, it's that what is essential, right? It came that whole argument of what's an essential business, and wellness places were able to stay open without a problem. It's just crazy because it shows kind of how backwards our society was. They shut down gyms left and right, places that movement is medicine, and at least they left the spas open so people could come in and get, things like high dose vitamin C's.
Did you do well? Did you guys do well then during that time?
I'll tell you right now, some of our best times were those COVID times because it's in I mean, it's in the mainstream.
Everything else was open. Everything else was closed.
People started to talk to other people, and they were like, if I go and I get some of these nutrients and these minerals and these vitamins, high dose vitamin C, for example, or glutathione, they knew that there were ways for them to stay healthier. Because what was happening during COVID. It was, you name a medication, people out there were flocking towards it, right? So for us, COVID actually, I hate to say it because everyone out there listening is going to be like, this guy's nuts. COVID was a boom for us. It was a good thing. It put a lot of attention on the space.
And then at what point did you decide, okay, now's the right time to turn this into a franchise and expand it and grow?
So again, you have a lot of experience in this, Josh. So what I'm about to say might rub some people the wrong way. I think traditional franchising is broken. And what I mean by that is I kind of go to the analogy that no two snowflakes are the same. So how we operate in New York, for example, when we get there it's similar to how we operate in Baton Rouge, but there's definitely going to be some differences here and there. So, when we went into this, we went into it with full intent of franchising. We had already had 3 to 4 people lined up to buy franchises just based on this concept alone. So this wasn't a decision of let's open this and see if it works and then we'll franchise it. we kind of took that shotgun approach and said, you know what, we're going to open this damn thing up. We're going to use this as a test kitchen. We're going to figure out what services work and what services don't. And we're going to learn what the core business is. And we knew from that core business we could franchise off that. We're probably 20% of where we're going to be in the next 5 years. And that's exciting because that's a combination of new technologies that are out there in this space, more awareness, and as medical laws change, that could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing.
Well, talk a little bit about the brokenness of franchising. I like that. I've been in franchising, as you said, a long time, and I tend to agree with it. I mean, there's a right way to franchise. And there's certainly a wrong way, but there's a lot of in between there too. There's not just one way to grow a business, but I'm curious what your thoughts are when you say franchising is broken.
Well, when I look at it, it's kind of like when you have a franchise and they say, these are the only pieces of equipment you can buy. These are the only offerings that you can have. Okay, that's great for a certain time, but there's a lot of ebb and flow. And I think the biggest buyers today being that, the whole mentality of that 20-year-old to 30-year-old buyer is much different than it was 15 years ago when I was that age. I think people that want franchises, they're entrepreneurial by heart. Our attorney put it kind of the best way. He's like, they're entrepreneurs that need a little bit of wiggle room, but you still have to give them guidance. So my belief is in franchising, you've got to be open to pivot at any time. You've got to be open to understand that, hey, just because this system worked yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work next week. And if somebody wants to argue with that, I'll just say COVID, because we all came out of COVID doing business differently. I believe that you have to have the right support from an operational level. You have to have the right systems. You have to have the right technology. But as far as offerings go, I think you can leave some openness there for the franchisees to put, some of their own thought pattern into it, some of their own different packages. What we're doing with Covery, for example, is we have our base set of equipment that people have to buy. There's certain modalities they have to buy that we know build the foundation of this business. But you might have an extreme passion for cellular biohacking. So you might really want to bring in things like ozone IVs and methylene blue, some of these crazier things out there, where the guy, 2 states over, they might be in Utah, which is one of the vainest places in the world right now, that's going to do a lot better with things like the body contouring than you are with cellular health.
But the point is, you're giving the franchisees more flexibility than they probably traditionally would otherwise have.
And Josh, I'm going to tell you right now, that's come back to bite me in the ass a couple of times. But at the same time, it's provided us with a lot of good ideas, because it's for the franchisor, the head franchisor, to think they're the only person that has ideas that are right and wrong is just, it's backwards.
You can go through some of the biggest franchises in the U.S. has ever seen. Some of their greatest, products that they've developed have been developed by franchisees who came up with it. Yeah. And pushed it. And so the idea, I really like what you're saying here. And I tend to agree with you. I think in franchising, you have to have a proven system. You have to have a core level of a foundation, but how you operate in New York versus Oklahoma versus California versus, Texas versus, all these places not only have a local flair to them, a local differentiating, factors. They have a local populace that's differing. And so I think as a franchise and as a franchisor, you really have to be attuned to what are the core aspects of this and what are the things that our franchisees can have some flexibility with so that they can excel in their local areas. And I'm seeing that more and more. And I think that's the right way to go. Now, to your point too, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but also too, as a franchisor, that's one of the reasons to have corporate locations is you can test things out on your own corporate locations before you push it down to a franchisee and test it out on them. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. So it kind of goes both ways there.
I absolutely agree. And it's, again, we're still new at this. So we're yet to be determined if this is right or if this is wrong. But
what happens is, and this, when part of it is, you get the economies of scale on, if everybody's buying from the same supplier, you usually get a little bit of a break, especially as you scale and get bigger. And oftentimes you may get some rebates from that. You may get some benefits as well. But where you really need to think through it is always, okay, at what point are we forcing them to do this because it more benefits us and less them? And if that's the analysis, if you're being really objective, then I think you're at a point where you go, yeah, maybe we should give them another option, if there is another option. And most of the systems like yours, I'm sure will have, you have to maintain quality controls. But certainly if franchisees can find something of similar, same quality that's better, you're seeing a lot of franchise systems going to, okay, well, we'll listen, we'll give you a shot. And I think that's the spirit of what a lot of people these days are looking for in franchising. And it's also why it gets a bad rap too, because there are a lot of systems out there that are not like that.
And I think you got to ask the franchisee when they come in. That's something that we like to do is figure out, okay, are you looking for strictly a plug and play? Or are you looking for something that, you can kind of put some of your own swag into? And you ask 10 different franchisees, it's divided. And so we know exactly how to treat these people as they come into our system.
Now, you guys are looking at multi-unit operators, right? I mean, is that kind of the goal to get some folks in there that are going to develop multiple locations? We are.
And that's a tricky one because we've talked about going to the broker network, going to franchise sales organizations out there. We've got a lot of these things sold. We could probably have 3 to 5 times as many, but to me, that's a cautionary tale because when these brokers are selling this product, you don't know necessarily if you have that right end buyer. And so we are doing area developers, but they have to have developed other brands first. They have to have some type of a pedigree in franchising. I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make is giving somebody, no matter how successful they were in their corporate career, giving them a 10-store market and saying, go develop this if they've never run a franchise. So we're taking more seasoned area developers right now. And then doing a lot.
I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial too. And brokers get on my ass for this because there's a lot of good ones out there, but I'm not a fan of the broker networks early on in a franchise. I think they have their time and their place. Sometimes, and oftentimes, frankly, I mean, they can do a good job of coming in and springboarding. The problem is number one, what's that relationship spelled out like in the legal contract? What are they tying into? How are you paying them, royalties forever on them finding people? Number two, you guys have differing interests, right? I mean, as a franchisor, your main interest, especially when you're new, is, at least in my opinion, the smart way to do it is to say, okay, we'd rather take a little bit longer, but try to ensure that the first 10, 15, 20, 25 that we get in are rock solid. They're A-plus players. There's no guarantee for success, but we're not going to cut corners on that because we're really building a foundation here of these early franchisees from which we can springboard. And the broker networks, I don't really care what they tell you. They're out there to sell franchises.
That's their job.
That's their job. And so they can do it really well and bring you a lot of people, and then the economic pressures start. You as a franchisor start going, in the back of your mind or your gut, you're going, this is not the right person, but the economic pressures start and you got somebody right there ready to go. Yep. And what ends up happening is you succumb to it and you go, okay, fine, we'll do it. And then there are some disaster stories out there, right? Where you grew really, really fast, but you got the wrong people on board. And at the end of the day, it's way better, in my opinion, to grow a little bit slower and have that sense of urgency to get out there and work harder and find the right person than unwind something that you knew you shouldn't have ever gotten into, because that's hard and that's expensive.
It is. And we had that. We had the ability. We had a group in Egypt approach us for the Covery Wellness. They wanted that over there. And, as excited as we were, that would be a huge, star in our cap. At the same time, it could have been absolutely disastrous. And so I think to your point, as any new franchisor, it's a delicate dance because you have to grow smart. And to grow smart sometimes means growing slow. But if you are not at a full sprint right now, you're being passed every single day. So, I always tell somebody that being a new franchisee or a new franchisor, it's very similar to flying an airplane while you assemble it. And that's why the first sets of franchisees are so critical. I mean, we don't look, you got to be honest with these franchisees, because at the end of the day, they're putting their kids' college tuition on the line. They're putting their homes on the line, their 401ks, their whole life's work, because now they want to do something on their own. And you got to make sure you got that right person. Like you said,
you got to make sure they got enough capital. You got to make sure. I mean, I just, it drives me crazy when I see franchise systems that, they sell the dream and the people, they literally put everything in it to where they don't have enough for a rainy day. And that's what ultimately kills them or applies so much pressure that they can't get it over the hump. And so, you got to find the people out there that are really, truly the good fits. And I think, especially with a system like this, I mean, you don't need to have every franchisee have the same type of background, but you do need some similarities, right? I mean, you do need to, I'd be curious, what are in our remaining moments here to tell us who are you looking for? Who's sort of the ideal, what's the avatar for the ideal type of franchisee operator to come in?
It's got to be somebody with that infinite mindset, knowing that they're getting into something right now that is going to change over the next 5 to 10 years. There's not a stable course for the wellness industry right now. It's a great industry. It's like a gold rush. But you got to get that franchisee that, number one, they're aggressive. They've got a lot of good ideas, but they also know when to kind of quiet down and listen and when to follow. We look for franchisees that have had success in their own life, like in the corporate worlds, but particularly, have they been able to lead teams successfully? You can lead yourself successfully, but you're not going to do very good as a franchisor if you can't build your team, obviously. The third thing we look at, obviously, is capital. If somebody is on that line and they're not sure, if we're not sure they're going to be able to make it, the answer is you don't sell to them yet. There's lesser cost systems that they can go to out there that might be a better fit. So for us, it's their eagerness to learn. It's their understanding of what's going on in this space. Because again, as you know, Josh, when you're in this medical, somewhat quasi-medical field, as an owner, you're not necessarily the final decision maker. It's that MD. It's those nurses that have to make those decisions because it's their licenses that are on the line. So we look for that franchisee that understands that as well. There has to be a sense of empathy with them.
So if somebody wants to learn more about this, because obviously in this market too, you're in the business of educating people too. You got to educate them on what all this stuff is. I know they can go to thecovery.com. So thecovery.com. Any other places where they can connect with you, Edward?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm underneath Edward Keith on LinkedIn. You can also follow at the Covery Wellness on Instagram and Facebook. And we have a YouTube channel as well under the Covery Wellness.
So when I speak to you 2 years from now, where's the Covery going to be in your best world here?
To me, in a matter of 2 years, what I think would be successful we'd have a pipeline of about 250 locations sold, which we're very much trending towards. I'd like to have in the next 2 years, I'd like to see about 30 to 40 stores open, which is aggressive, but we're approaching 10 already. That when you could call any one of those owners and they're like, you know what, I'm working on my second store right now, or I'm working on my third, or I'm working on my fourth. That to me is successful when you've got owners that are buying into your system for stores 2, 3, and 4.
Well, thank you, Edward, for coming on. I love talking to folks who not only have interesting models, but you're right in the thralls of it right now. You're in the hustle, making it happen, and I love that because there is no substitute for that in franchising. And as a franchisee, if somebody comes in as a franchisee, they have to know they got to hustle too. And that never changes, and especially in an industry like this that just continues to grow and change over time. So I look forward to checking back in with you a while down the road, but it sounds like you're off to a good start, and thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Franchise Euphoria. If you enjoyed it, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. It really helps to get this show out to more and more people. Also, if you have any questions, have ideas for guests or topics, please email me, josh@indyfranchiselaw.com. That's josh@indy, INDY, franchiselaw.com. And finally, please note that this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes and is not in any way, shape, or form meant to be any kind of legal advice. If you're seeking legal advice, please contact a lawyer. Have a great one. Happy franchising.